She was 6 years old, 42 pounds, and she walked into the most dangerous room in the neighborhood, carrying a crayon note and a request that would undo a man who had spent 45 years making himself impossible to undo. He had built an empire on fear. She offered him something he hadn't felt since he was 7 years old, and bleeding on a sidewalk alone, the chance to be chosen. He almost said no. He almost walked away, and then he saw the handwriting. There is a particular kind of story that doesn't announce itself as important. It arrives quietly, in the trembling of small hands, in the fold of a crumpled piece of paper, in the moment. A man who controls an entire neighborhood suddenly cannot speak. This is one of those stories, and I have been sitting with it for weeks, turning it over, because I think it asks a question that most of us have never dared to answer. What would you have become if someone had walked you to school? My name is Emma, and this is my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, you already know that the stories I bring you are the ones that stay. The ones that make you check on someone you haven't spoken to in too long, or sit quietly with yourself for a few minutes after the video ends. This one is that kind of story. Before we begin, I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want you to answer in the comments. Was there a moment in your childhood, a specific, real moment, when you needed someone to show up for you, and they didn't? And did it change you? How you protect yourself, how you love, who you decided to become? Tell me, because I think this story is going to mean something different to every person who hears it, and I want to know what it means to you. Maybe your comment will appear in the next video. Now, let me take you to a Tuesday morning in October, on a street where everyone knows whose neighborhood it is, and where a 6-year-old girl is about to walk through a door that grown men avoid. The barbershop smelled the way it always had. Warm lather, bay rum, the faint chemical edge of clipper oil, and something underneath all of it, something that had no name, a stillness that didn't belong to a place where men came to be groomed. It belonged to a place where things were decided. The front of the shop was ordinary enough. 2 chairs, a long mirror, a counter with jars of combs standing in blue disinfectant. A small television mounted near the ceiling, playing a soccer match with the volume too low to matter. 2 barbers who had worked there for 11 years and who answered questions with their hands more than their mouths. The back of the shop was behind a door that was always closed. Everyone on the street knew what was behind that door. Nobody talked about it the way you'd talk about a fact. They talked about it the way you'd talk about weather. You simply understood it, adjusted around it, and kept moving. I was watching from the laundromat across the street when she went in. I want to be clear about that, because it matters. I didn't see her go in. I heard about it later, from Rosa, who ran the laundromat and saw everything that happened on that block from behind her folded towel mountain, and from Clea, who had been sweeping the sidewalk in front of the flower stall 3 doors down, and who stopped sweeping the moment she recognized the little girl, Alara, 6 years old, dark braids with yellow elastic bands, a backpack shaped like a turtle, sneakers with a Velcro strap on the left side that had stopped sticking and had to be folded under. She had been walking past this block for 5 months. Every school morning, every school afternoon, and for 5 months, 3 older boys had been waiting for her somewhere between her building and the school gate. 9 years old, 10 years old enough to be deliberate about it. They took her snack, they pushed her into fences. Once, they took the turtle backpack and threw it into a puddle and stood there watching her fish it out, and they laughed the whole time. This had been happening for 22 weeks. I know this because Serena told me. Serena, Ilara's mother, 34 years old, works the morning shift at a medical records office 4 bus stops away, leaves at 7:15, drops Ilara at the neighbor's door at 7, trusts that the neighbor walks her as far as the corner. Trusts. Past tense and present tense in one verb, all the weight of a working single mother's arithmetic compressed into it. She had gone to the school. Twice. She had spoken to the vice principal, a woman named Dolores, who had a lanyard with motivational phrases on it, and a gift for making you feel that the problem you'd brought her was slightly smaller than you'd thought when you arrived. She had filled out 2 incident forms. She had received 1 email response acknowledging receipt. Nothing changed. Ilara had stopped eating breakfast. She'd started waking up at 5 in the morning and sitting at the foot of her bed with her backpack already on, as if leaving earlier might outwit the boys. She didn't tell her mother why she sat there. She just sat. Serena would find her there, backpack on, turtle face pointing forward, waiting for a morning that felt safe enough to enter. On the Tuesday in October, the neighbor was sick. Serena had to leave early for a file audit she couldn't reschedule. She walked Alara to the corner, crouched down to her level, and said, "Stay on this side of the street. Walk straight. Don't stop." She said it with the particular calm of someone who has decided to believe that calm is protective. She kissed her daughter's forehead and left. Alara walked 3 blocks. Then she stopped in front of the barber shop. Rosa from the laundromat said she stood there for 4 minutes. Just stood, looking at the closed door at the back of the shop that was visible through the front window. Then she walked in, said something to one of the barbers, and disappeared through the door. The barber she spoke to was Marco. I know what she said to him because Marco told Clea, and Clea told Rosa, and Rosa told me, in that complete and efficient system of neighborhood information that moves faster than any news channel and is almost always accurate. She said, "I need to speak to the man in charge. Please, it's important." Marco, who had worked in that shop for 11 years and had heard most things, later said it was the please that did it. He opened the door. The office at the back of the barber shop was not what you would imagine if you were imagining from movies. There was no velvet, no paintings of horses, no cigar smoke in theatrical quantities. There was a desk made of dark wood that had been there since before Dante took the room over, a standing lamp with a cream shade, 2 chairs for visitors, a filing cabinet, and on the wall behind the desk, 3 framed photographs. One of them showed a street in a neighborhood Dante no longer returned to. One showed a woman who had died 14 years ago. The third was a photograph of this neighborhood taken from a rooftop. The grid of it, the small shops, the steeple of the church on Mercer, the particular angle of afternoon light that only existed here. Dante was behind the desk when Marco opened the door. He was 52, and he carried it as a fact rather than an apology. Silver and charcoal hair swept back from a broad forehead, the kind of face that had absorbed decades and kept the record on the surface. Fine lines at the corners of near-black eyes, silver stubble that no razor ever fully settled, a jaw that seemed made for silence. He wore a white dress shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a watch on his left wrist that he never removed and never mentioned. He looked up when the door opened, and then he looked further down, because the visitor was very small. Alara stood in the doorway. She was breathing carefully, the way children breathe when they have decided to be brave and are monitoring themselves for signs of failure. Her turtle backpack sat between her shoulder blades. Her left sneaker's Velcro was folded under. She said, "Are you the man in charge?" Dante looked at Marco. Marco looked at the ceiling. Then Marco pulled the door closed and left them. "Who told you to come here?" Dante asked. His voice was the voice of a man who had used it professionally for decades. Not loud, never loud, but with a quality of filling the room that had nothing to do with volume. "Nobody," Alara said. "I decided. Something crossed his face that was not quite an expression. A flicker, brief and internal, the way a curtain moves when a window is open somewhere else in the house. "What do you want?" he said. She pulled the backpack around to her front and unzipped it carefully. She reached past a pencil case and a water bottle and a folder of drawings and pulled out a piece of paper that had been folded 3 times and was soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded many times before this moment. She held it out. He didn't take it. He looked at it. "You read it," she said. He leaned forward slightly and looked at the paper in her outstretched hand. The writing was in orange crayon, large, careful letters, the kind of deliberate penmanship that a child uses when they know what they're writing matters. It said, "I only want to get to school without feeling afraid." He read it once. Then he read it again. For a moment, one precise, unrepeatable moment, the room was completely still. I need to tell you what happened inside Dante in that moment, because it is the whole center of this story, and I will do it as accurately as I can. He was 7 years old, a Tuesday in November, not October. He remembered it was colder. He had a notebook with a red cover that a teacher had given him for writing practice. And after the 3rd time the boys on the way to school had caught him and left him on the ground with a split lip and his lunch scattered, he had sat at the kitchen table and written something in that notebook with a pencil. His mother found it that evening. She sat with it for a long time, without saying anything. Then she put it down and made dinner, because there was nothing else to do. No one walked him to school after that. No one confronted the boys, who were the sons of men who were owed things by other men. He went back the next morning alone, and the morning after. and the morning after. What he had written in the notebook was, "I only want to get to school without feeling afraid." He had not thought about those words in 45 years. He was looking at them now, in a 6-year-old girl's orange crayon. He was quiet for long enough that Alara, watching him, decided to speak. "You're the strongest person around here," she said. It was not flattery. It was the same neutral observation she might have made about the height of a building, a fact she had assessed and filed. "If you walk with me, nobody will bother me." Dante set the paper down on the desk. He looked at his hands for a moment. Then he looked at her. "How long has this been happening?" he said. "Since May. 5 months. 22 weeks, she said, with a precision that landed somewhere between her ribs and his. He was quiet again. Then, "Where's your mother?" "At work. She doesn't know I'm here." A pause. "She'll be upset." "She should be. About me coming here or about the boys?" He looked at her. "Both," he said. Something that was almost a smile passed through her eyes and disappeared. She refolded the paper along its existing creases, the practiced ease of a child who had folded and unfolded this page many times, perhaps in the dark, perhaps at 5 in the morning sitting at the foot of her bed, and put it back in the backpack. "I can pay you," she said. "I have $4 and a bouncy ball. The ball is very good." In 45 years, no one had made him feel what he felt in that sentence. He identified it later, much later, the way you identify a sound you heard once as a child and thought you'd forgotten. It was the feeling of something being restored. "Keep your $4, he said. He stood up. "And the ball." He came around the desk. He was tall. She had to look up in a way that bent her whole neck back, and she did it without flinching. "I'll walk you today," he said. "But you're going to tell me everything. Every morning, every afternoon, every one of their faces. You understand?" She nodded. "And when we get to the school, you're going to show me who to speak to." She nodded again. "And tonight your mother calls me." At this, for the first time, a flicker of genuine worry crossed her face. "She's going to be really upset," she said again. "Probably," he said. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. "But she's going to be less upset than she would be if you kept walking to school alone." Alara considered this with the seriousness it deserved. Then she zipped her backpack, adjusted it to her shoulders, and looked up at him. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." He had not walked a child to school in his life. He had, in 45 years of moving through this neighborhood, never once been asked to do something so small, so ordinary, so entirely without strategy. He walked out of his office, through the shop, past Marco, who was carefully not looking at anything, and out onto the morning street, beside a 6-year-old girl who walked with her chin up and her Velcro folded under, and her whole body quietly vibrating with the effort of not letting him see how relieved she was. He did not look down at her often. But when he did, he saw a child who had decided to solve her own problem through the most direct means available, who had assessed her resources and spent them, who had walked into a room that grown men avoided and come out with what she needed. He thought, with a clarity that surprised him, "She's braver than I was." He didn't say it. They walked. The school was 6 blocks from the barber shop. On any other morning, those 6 blocks had a specific texture, the particular sound of sneakers on uneven sidewalk, the smell of the bakery at the corner of Mercer and 5th opening its vents, the light through the gap between buildings that hit the street at a low angle in October and made everything look briefly golden. Alara knew every crack in the pavement on this route. She knew which parked car always had the radio on. She knew the orange cat that sat in the window of the 2nd-floor apartment above the printing shop and never moved. She knew, with the specific sonar of a child who had been frightened on the same route for 22 weeks, exactly where the boys usually appeared. The corner of 5th and Arch. Or the alley entrance between the phone repair shop and the laundromat, which was tight enough that they could block it completely. Or, on days when they were feeling ambitious, directly in front of the school gate. Today they were at 5th and Arch. There were 3 of them. Marcus, the oldest at 10, who was thick-necked and moved with the practiced aggression of someone who had learned that size was currency. Devin, 9, quieter, the one who watched exits. And a 3rd boy whose name Alara didn't know, who always stood slightly behind the other 2 and laughed at everything they did. They saw her from half a block away. She knew because she felt the change in their posture. A sharpening, a realignment, the way predators shift when they recognize prey. She had learned to read this from a distance. the way a person who has been frightened enough times learns to read weather. Then they saw who was walking next to her. The sharpening stopped. The realignment reversed. Devin took a half step backward before he was aware he was doing it. Marcus, who had less survival instinct than Devin but more pride, held his ground for approximately 4 seconds. Then he found something across the street that required his attention. They did not say a word. Alara walked past them without looking at them. She kept her chin level, her pace steady. She did not speed up. She did not flinch. She was 6 years old, and she walked past 3 boys who had been making her mornings into something to be endured. And she walked past them as though they were lampposts. Dante watched the boys without appearing to watch them. He noted faces, approximate heights, the way each one handled the disruption of an unexpected variable. He would know all 3 of them by name before the week was out. He already had a working hypothesis about their fathers. At the school gate, a woman with a clipboard was managing the morning crowd of parents and children. She had the efficient, slightly frantic energy of someone whose day had already exceeded its planned parameters. Dante waited while Alara's class went through the gate. Then he spoke to the woman with the clipboard. He spoke quietly. He was good at quiet. The woman with the clipboard became very still. She said she would arrange a meeting with the principal for that afternoon. She said it would be the principal, not the vice principal. She said it in a way that suggested the distinction mattered. Alara, halfway through the gate, turned back to look at him. "Thank you," she said. "I'll be here at 3, he said. She held his gaze for a moment, those dark 7-year-old eyes that had been looking at the world with too much alertness for too long. Then she turned and walked to her classroom. He stood at the gate until she disappeared through the door. He thought about the notebook with the red cover. He thought about the kitchen table. He thought about the morning after, and the morning after that, and 45 years of mornings that had all been built on the architecture of that first decision. Never again be the one who needs protecting. He turned and walked back toward the barber shop. Marco did not say anything when he came in. He also did not say nothing. There was a cup of coffee on the desk in the back office, still hot. Dante sat down. He picked up the coffee. He set it down. He picked up the orange crayon note from the desk and held it for a long time. The meeting with the principal happened at 3:15. I want to describe it carefully, because what happened in that room, what was revealed in that room, was not something that surprised Dante exactly, but it was something that crystallized for him in a way that changed the shape of the weeks ahead. Principal Hartley was a man in his mid-50s who had the particular bearing of someone who had survived many difficult conversations by managing their surface. He had salt and pepper hair combed with conviction, a blazer that suggested institutional seriousness, and a handshake designed to establish authority without provoking it. He had, when Dante entered, a specific expression, the one that bureaucratic men use for men. They recognize as powerful in ways that fall outside their own systems, an expression that is simultaneously deferential and carefully disowning. There were documents on the desk. Dante had asked for them. He had been told there were no formal incident records for Alara. There were, in fact, 14 incident records for 8 different children. Over the span of 2 years. All 3 boys were named in multiple reports. All 3 boys were the sons of Councilman Ray Prentice, who chaired the school board's funding committee and whose name appeared on the donor wall in the school lobby. None of the 14 incident reports had progressed beyond initial filing. "Explain to me," Dante said, "what you were waiting for." Hartley used the word process 4 times in 90 seconds. He used the phrase, the appropriate channels, twice. He explained that there were protocols, that there were considerations, that the situation was complex. Dante looked at him for a long time without speaking. 8 children, he said. You let 8 children leave this school. You kept their paperwork. You kept his name off it. Hartley said something about the funding cycle and the complexity of political. "Look at me," Dante said. Hartley looked. "This stops," Dante said. "This week. Not through channels. Not through a committee. This week." Hartley was quiet. "I'm going to be at this gate every morning," Dante said. "And I'm going to speak to the parents of every child in those 14 reports. And if anything happens to Alara, or to any other child in this building, before you've done what you need to do, I will have a conversation with your school board that you will find very unpleasant." He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "You have 1 week," he said. He walked out. In the hallway, Alara was waiting on a bench with her turtle backpack, drawing something in a notebook. She looked up when he came out. "How did it go?" she said. "Fine," he said. "Did you use your scary voice?" He looked at her. "I don't have a scary voice," She gave him an expression that was so specifically skeptical that he had to look away. "Come on," he said. "I'll walk you home." They walked. The sky had gone the particular shade of October gray that arrives in the late afternoon, and the bakery on Mercer had switched from morning rolls to something with cinnamon that drifted into the street and settled over everything. Ilara walked with her chin up and her Velcro folded under. "The boys didn't do anything today," she said after a while. "I know. Because of you." "Because of you," he said. "You came to the barber shop." She considered this. "That's called taking initiative," she said. "My mom says it's important." "Your mom is right. She's going to be really upset," Ilara said for the third time. But the worry in it was lighter now. It had become something closer to a warm problem, the kind of problem that comes wrapped in the knowledge that someone who loves you is about to find out what you did. "She's going to call you tonight," he said. "You know that. I know." A pause. "What will you tell her?" "The truth," he said. She nodded. She seemed to find this satisfactory. They reached her building. She turned to face him with the solemnity of a 6-year-old completing a business transaction. "Same time tomorrow?" she said. He thought about many things in that half-second. He thought about the 14 incident reports, and the councilman's sons and the 8 children who had not had anyone to walk them. "Same time tomorrow," he said. She went inside. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, in the October gray, and thought that something had shifted in the day's architecture in a way he hadn't planned for, and wasn't sure he could name. He walked back to the barber shop. The coffee Marco had made was cold. He drank it anyway. "I need to tell you about Serena, because she is not a secondary figure in this story, even if she enters it quietly." She came home at 6:17. She put her bag down on the kitchen chair, the way she always did, and found Ilara at the table with the notebook and a box of crayons, drawing something that looked like 3 people holding hands. She kissed her daughter's head and asked about her day in the particular shorthand of mothers who have 30 minutes between arrival and dinner and know how to read a child's tone, and Ilara told her. She told her about the boys and the 5th month, and the 22 weeks, and the morning decision, and the barber shop, and the man in the office, and the orange crayon note that she had been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment to use it. She told her about the walk to school, and the boys at 5th and Arch who didn't do anything, and the meeting after school, and walking home with her chin up. She told her all of it, in one long, careful stream of a 6-year-old who has been carrying something heavy and has finally set it down. Serena listened. She did not move during most of it. Her hands were flat on the table. Her expression passed through several things in sequence. The first was the particular stunned silence of a parent hearing that their child has been suffering for 5 months in secret. The second was the controlled fury of a woman who had filed 2 incident reports and received 1 email and had been told, with professional warmth, that nothing could be done faster. The third was something harder to name, a reckoning with the architecture of her own mornings, all the 7:15 departures, the trust compressed into that single verb. When Ilara finished, Serena picked up her phone and looked at the number her daughter had written, in crayon, on the inside cover of the notebook. She called it. Dante answered on the second ring. She said, "This is Serena, Ilara's mother. I expected your call," he said. She had prepared on the bus home and threw the key in the lock and threw her daughter's entire account, a specific version of this conversation. It involved her appreciation for what he had done, alongside her very clear statement that she was not comfortable with this arrangement continuing. She had the words in order. She knew how to deliver them. Instead, what she said was, "She's been waking up at 5 in the morning for 22 weeks with her backpack on." He was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. "She told me." The conversation lasted longer than she had planned. He told her about the meeting with Hartley. He told her about the 14 reports and the 8 children and the councilman's sons. He told her about the 1 week he'd given them. She was quiet through all of it, with the compressed focus of a woman who works in medical records and understands better than most people what it means when paperwork is buried. "I want to see those records," she said. "I'll get you copies." "You shouldn't be the one doing this." "No," he agreed, "but I am." There was a silence that was different from the silences earlier in the call. Not the silence of processing information, but the silence of 2 people on either side of a question neither of them was asking yet. I don't know how to feel about this, she said finally, honest in a way she hadn't planned to be. You don't have to feel any particular way about it, he said. She'll be at the shop at 7:30. I'll have her at the gate by 8. She said, Thank you, he said. She's a remarkable child. And she heard in those 4 words something she hadn't expected, not a pleasantry, not a compliment deployed to soften a strange situation, but a statement of fact from a man who measured things precisely and said exactly what he measured. She said goodnight. She set the phone down. Ilara was watching her from across the table. Well, she said. Serena looked at her daughter, at the backpack still on the chair, at the drawing on the table. 3 people holding hands, one very tall. Well, she said, I suppose you have school tomorrow. Ilara smiled. It was the first full smile, not cautious, not calculated, not the careful expression of a child monitoring for danger. Just a smile, wide and uncomplicated, and 6 years old. She slept without waking that night. Serena heard her breathing change at 10:30, deep and even and still, and sat in the doorway for a long time listening to a sound she hadn't heard in 22 weeks. Sleep without nightmares. Sleep without armor. She thought about a man behind a desk with a cup of cold coffee and a crayon note, and 45 years of something she couldn't name yet, but was beginning to feel the shape of. She thought about the 14 incident reports, about the 8 children, about the word process as a weapon. She got up and went to bed and lay in the dark thinking about what it meant that a 6-year-old had solved, in one morning, what 2 months of official channels had not. She fell asleep with her hand over her mouth, the way she did when something moved her and she didn't want to make sound. The second morning, Dante was at the barbershop door at 7:25. He told himself, during the previous evening and the morning, that this was a practical matter. There was a situation. He had assessed it and decided to intervene because the situation involved his neighborhood and a pattern that affected his neighborhood's order. This was within the scope of what he did. This was not unusual. He stood at the door and waited. At 7:30 exactly, Ilara appeared at the end of the block. She was walking with her mother. This was not what he had expected. Serena was 34, with warm, golden brown skin and dark, wavy hair that was pulled back for a workday in a low knot with escaped strands around her face. She wore the kind of clothes that said her morning started early, and her day would ask a lot of her. A good coat over practical layers, a bag with the strap worn across the body, the specific posture of a woman who moves efficiently because she has to. Her dark almond eyes had a quality of observation in them, a slight forward lean of the attention, the way people look when they've learned that important things are often said in the margins. She walked slightly ahead of Ilara in the way of mothers, not pulling, but available. They reached the barbershop door. She wanted me to come, Serena said. It was unclear whether she meant this as an explanation or an apology. Good, Dante said. Ilara looked up at both of them and said, Can we go? I don't want to be late. With the particular authority of a child who has become the organizing principle of a new arrangement. They walked. The 3 of them. Dante on the outside, Ilara between them, Serena on the inside, her coat belted against the October morning, her bag strap diagonal across her chest. The bakery on Mercer exhaled its first breath of the day, yeast and warmth, and something with cardamom that had nothing to do with October, and everything to do with the family that owned it. The orange cat was in its window. The parked car had its radio on, a morning news program discussing something that had nothing to do with any of them. At 5th and Arch, the boys were not there. Ilara noted this without comment. Dante noted it with the particular attention of someone who was tracking a process, not a single outcome. At the school gate, the woman with the clipboard, whose name, Serena told him, was Fernanda, and who had worked there for 9 years, and was the one who had helped with the first incident report, the one that had been filed and gone nowhere, was waiting. She handed Serena an envelope. It contained a printed copy of all 14 incident reports, pulled that morning by a suddenly very cooperative Vice Principal Dolores. The envelope also contained a typed note confirming that an emergency school board subcommittee meeting had been requested for Thursday. Serena held the envelope with both hands and looked at it and said nothing for a moment. Thursday, she said. Thursday, Dante said. She looked at him. There was something in her expression that he couldn't fully read, or rather, that he could read but chose, for the moment, to leave alone. He recognized in her the specific effort of a proud, capable person adjusting to the presence of an unexpected ally. It was not comfortable for her. He understood that. He respected it. Ilara had gone through the gate. She appeared at the fence opening and stuck her face through and said, "Mom, I love you. Dante, same time?" "Same time," he said. She disappeared into the schoolyard. Serena turned toward the bus stop. She paused. "There's a coffee place on Mercer," she said. "Rosa told me you probably walk past it every morning." "I do," he said. "She also told me everything about you," she said. "So I want you to know I'm not—" She paused, choosing precisely, operating without information. "I assumed," he said. "Good." She adjusted her bag strap. "The coffee is better at the place 2 blocks further. Actually, the one on Mercer is just closer." She walked to her bus stop. He stood there for a moment in the October morning, and then walked 2 blocks further for coffee, because she was correct, and he knew it without needing to test it. The coffee was better. He drank it standing up, looking at the street, thinking about things that had no immediate business being thought about. He walked back to the barber shop and sat down behind his desk, and opened the filing cabinet, and stared at nothing for a while. Marco brought coffee. Dante already had coffee. Marco brought it anyway. This was how Marco expressed things he didn't say. Dante drank both coffees. He read the 14 incident reports that afternoon. He had spent 45 years building systems that other people feared and relied on simultaneously. He knew bureaucratic concealment the way a locksmith knows a lock, from the inside. And what he saw in those 14 reports was not sloppiness or indifference, which would have been bad enough. What he saw was precision. The reports had been filed. The process had been followed. Every step had been performed correctly, completely, and then placed in a sequence specifically designed to go nowhere. It was expert management of the appearance of response while engineering the absence of outcome. 8 children had left the school. 1 had transferred to a school 3 neighborhoods away. 1 family had moved. 3 had simply stopped attending. 3 more could not be traced through the records because their parents had never formally withdrawn them. They had simply stopped sending their children, because the official channels had failed them, and because there are limits to what people will ask of systems that have already told them no. He thought about Ilara at 5 in the morning with her backpack on. He thought about 8 other children who had not had anyone to walk them. He picked up his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to a man who worked in the local news. The second was to a woman who worked for a parents' advocacy organization that had been trying to get a meeting with Councilman Prentice for 7 months. The third was to a man who knew more about Prentice's funding arrangements than Prentice probably preferred. He didn't threaten anyone in any of the 3 calls. He simply provided information and asked questions, and suggested that the information and questions might be valuable to people who cared about particular things. Then he put the phone down and sat with the filing cabinet open and the 14 reports in front of him, and thought about the red notebook, about his mother's face when she found it, about the way she had put it down and made dinner, not because she didn't care, but because caring is not always sufficient, and she had known, with the accuracy of someone who had lived inside the same system her whole life, that there was nowhere to take the caring that would produce a different outcome. He was 52 years old, and he was learning, apparently, that some things take longer than 45 years to complete. The week had a rhythm. 7:30. Ilara at the barbershop door. Sometimes Serena, most days not. She had a bus to catch, and after the second morning it was clear that Ilara was going to arrive and depart as scheduled regardless, with the punctuality of someone who has decided that reliability is its own form of power. 8:15. The school gate. 3 o'clock. The school gate again. 3:45. Ilara deposited at her building's front door. 4 o'clock. Dante back at the barbershop sitting behind the desk, thinking. On Wednesday, the school board received a formal complaint from the parents of 4 of the 8 displaced children, parents who had been contacted the previous evening by the Parents' Advocacy Organization, which had been contacted by Dante, which had been contacted because Serena had been given the 14 reports, and had spent her lunch break making phone calls with the particular efficiency of a woman who works in records, and understands that information, properly organized, is a form of force. He found out about her lunch break phone calls when she texted him Wednesday evening, FYI, 4 more families coming to Thursday meeting. She didn't explain further. She didn't need to. He replied, noted, good work. She replied, don't patronize me. He almost smiled. He replied, I wasn't. 4 families is significant. She replied, I know it is. That's why I did it. He set the phone down and sat with it for a moment, this back and forth, and identified it as something he hadn't participated in for a long time. A conversation with someone who was not, in any way, adjusting themselves for him. Not afraid of him, not performing comfort, not managing his attention. She was simply herself. Plainly, and it was, he chose the word carefully, because he was a precise man. Startling. Thursday, the school board meeting. It lasted 3 hours. Serena attended in her lunch hour and stayed 2 hours past it. Dante was not in the meeting. His presence there would have changed its character in ways that wouldn't serve the outcome. And he knew it. He sat in the barber shop and waited. At 4:30, Serena texted, "Marcus and Devon suspended pending review. Third boy same. Principal Hartley put on administrative leave pending investigation. School board voted 5-2 to open formal inquiry into Prentice's influence on the committee." He read this 3 times. Then he replied, "Good." She replied, "That's all you have to say?" He considered. Then, "Well done." A pause. Then, "Better. Also, Alara slept again last night. Just so you know." He held the phone. He put it down and looked at the photograph on the wall. The neighborhood from the rooftop, the grid of it, the steeple of the church on Mercer. He had been looking at this photograph for 20 years. He had never once looked at it and thought about what it felt like to a 6-year-old girl to walk through it. He thought about it now. Friday afternoon, he picked up Alara from the gate, and they walked back toward her building. She had spent the morning in a school that felt different. She couldn't have said how, but different. The air in the hallways, the way Fernanda at the gate had looked at her when she arrived, the way 3 of her classmates had sat with her at lunch, which they had not done in 22 weeks. "Fernanda said the boys aren't coming back," Alara said as they walked. "Not for a while," Dante said. He paused. "Maybe not at all." She thought about this. What will happen to them? They'll go to a different school. They'll have to do certain things, answer for certain things. Will they be scared? He looked at her. "Probably," he said. She was quiet for half a block. Then, "I don't want them to be scared. I just want them to stop." He thought about many things in that sentence. About the difference between what she wanted and what he had spent 45 years building. About the fact that a 6-year-old had just articulated simply and precisely the distinction between justice and revenge. A distinction he had spent 4 decades deliberately not making. "That's a generous thing to think," he said. She shrugged. "My mom says being mean back doesn't fix the reason they were mean." He looked at her. Then he looked ahead at the street. "Your mom is very smart," he said. "I know," Alara said. "She's the smartest person I know, except maybe you." She paused. "But she's nicer." He did not reply to this. He walked. At her building door, she turned to face him with her end-of-day formality. "Same time Monday?" she said. "Same time Monday," he said. She went inside. He stood on the sidewalk. He thought about the word nice, and about 45 years, and about what it meant that a child had ranked him alongside her mother by a metric he had never once thought to apply to himself. He walked back to the barber shop in the October Friday afternoon and found, on his desk, a coffee Marco had made and a note from Marco that said, "The boys from the school came by. Not trouble, just wanted to see if you were real." He read the note twice. He drank the coffee. He sat for a long time with the orange crayon note, which he had not put away. It was still on the desk, unfolded, held flat by the weight of his coffee cup. He read it one more time. "I only want to get to school without feeling afraid," he thought. 45 years ago, nobody came. And he thought, "I'm here now," which was not the same as fixing it. He understood that. You cannot go back to a 7-year-old boy on a November morning on a cold sidewalk and change what happened to him. You cannot retroactively protect someone. The wound from that year had made him every subsequent year, had made him careful, had made him self-sufficient, had made him the man that the city feared, had built him a kingdom assembled entirely from the decision that he would never again need anyone, but you can show up for the next one. You can be at the gate at 7:30, and that, he thought, is something. The second week began on a Monday that smelled like the first cold front of the season, that particular edge in the air that arrives in the northeast like a declaration, thin and certain, carrying with it the specific quality of light that only exists for about 3 weeks in October before it hardens into November. Alara arrived at the barber shop at 7:30 with a new hat, red wool with a pom-pom, pulled low over her ears. She was also carrying something in addition to the turtle backpack, a small paper bag that she held with both hands. "For Marco," she said when Dante looked at it. "What is it?" "Cookies. My mom made them. She said it's rude to keep using someone's door without bringing something. He looked at her. Then he looked at the bag. She made them, he said, making sure. She stayed up late, Alara said, with the particular mixture of pride and mild grievance of a child who knows an adult has done something generous and unreasonable simultaneously. He held the door for her. She went in and presented the bag to Marco with a formality that made Marco, who had seen most things in 11 years behind a barber's chair, go slightly still in the way of a person receiving something unexpected and being unsure what to do with the feeling. Obrigada, Marco said, and then caught himself, and then didn't correct himself. Alara looked at him carefully. My mom says that too, she said, when she's really glad about something. Marco looked at the ceiling. He put the bag under the counter. They walked to school. The new cold front had done something to the city's morning geometry. People walked faster, collars up, the specific body language of a place that knows winter is not a metaphor. The bakery on Mercer had shifted its window display from the summer pastries to something denser, more substantial, the kind of baking that fills a room. The orange cat was in its window. The parked car had switched from news to classical music. At Fifth and Arch, nobody. This was the fourth school morning. Dante had expected the absence, but he noted it differently than he had the previous week, not as a victory requiring monitoring, but as a settled fact. The boys were not there because the boys had understood that the calculation had changed. He knew this type of understanding. He had spent his career engineering it. What he had not spent his career doing was noticing that the absence of something frightening could, in a small person, feel like a gift, so large, it needed time to absorb. He noticed it now in the way Alara walked, the same chin-up pace she had maintained since the first morning, but with a fractional difference in the set of her shoulders. Less management, more ease. She noticed him noticing. It's weird, she said, when something you were scared of just stops. What's weird about it? She thought. You keep waiting for it to start again. He was quiet for a moment. Then, that goes away eventually. Did it go away for you? He looked at her. She was watching the pavement in front of her with the focused attention of someone asking a question they've been holding for a while. Some things did, he said. Some things I stopped waiting and started doing something else instead. What? He considered the honest version of the answer, that he had converted fear into a system, that the system had become a life, that the life had worked exactly as designed and produced exactly the results intended, and none of the ones he hadn't thought to want. He considered the version of the answer appropriate for a 6-year-old on a Monday morning in October. I kept walking, he said. She absorbed this. That's what I'm doing, she said. I know, he said. They reached the gate. Fernanda was there. The schoolyard had a different quality this week. Not louder, not more activity, but a loosening. The particular held breath quality that had characterized it for 2 years, the quality that Dante had identified on the first morning without naming it yet, was beginning to exhale. He watched Alara go through the gate. She turned back once, not with the worried backward glance of someone checking that safety was still in place, but with the easy acknowledgement of someone confirming a shared routine. See you at 3, she said. At 3, he said. He walked back toward the barber shop. 2 blocks from the school, he passed a woman sitting on a building stoop with a cup of coffee, watching him. She was perhaps 65, with the kind of face that has made its peace with time, and she looked at him the way the neighborhood's older residents sometimes did, not with fear, not with the performative neutrality of people who had learned to look elsewhere, but with a specific frankness. You're the one walking Marta's granddaughter, she said. He stopped. Alara, he said. Alara's grandmother is Marta. Marta told me. She looked at her coffee. Good thing you did. He nodded. She used to come home and not eat dinner, the woman said. Marta heard her crying through the wall at night, thought it was dreams. She looked up. Wasn't dreams. He stood there for a moment on the sidewalk. No, he said. It wasn't. He walked on. He thought about walls and the sounds that pass through them, and the distance between hearing a child cry and knowing what to do with the hearing. He thought about his mother at the kitchen table. He thought about the particular moral weight of knowing and not acting. Not out of indifference, but out of not knowing what action was available, what system existed, what door could be knocked on. He had spent 45 years being the thing people went to when they had run out of doors. He had not, until 6 days ago, been a door that a 6-year-old could knock on. He filed this thought in the part of his mind where he kept things that required more time than the present moment offered. He went back to the barber shop. Marco had left 2 of Serena's cookies on a napkin on his desk. He ate them over the morning's paperwork. They were very good. I have to stop here for a moment, because something happened in the second week that I keep returning to when I think about what this story is really about. It happened on Wednesday. Serena had taken a half day from work, something she almost never did, the kind of decision that has a cost she was paying in advance and paying again. She met Dante at the school gate at 3 o'clock, and the three of them, Dante, Serena, Alara, walked back toward the neighborhood together. Alara ran ahead at one point to talk to a girl from her class who had a dog on a leash, and for approximately 4 minutes, Dante and Serena walked together at adult pace, side by side, without a 6-year-old organizing the space between them. This was the first time this had happened. Serena said, "The inquiry is moving faster than I expected." "The news story helped," he said. "That was you." "I made a call," he said. "The story made itself." She looked at him with an expression that was neither admiring nor skeptical, but something more interesting, the look of someone recalibrating a model they'd built, adjusting for new data. "You could have done worse things to Prentice," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," he said. "Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because Alara said she didn't want them to be scared. She just wanted them to stop." Serena stopped walking. He walked 2 more steps before he realized she had stopped and turned. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't categorize, not in any system he had built for reading people. It was open in a way that was unusual on her face, which was generally careful without being guarded, precise without being closed. Something had shifted. "She said that to you?" Serena said. "On Friday," he said, on the walk home. She looked at the street, then she looked back at him. "She's never said that to me," she said. There was no wound in it, just honest surprise, the kind a mother feels when her child reveals a room she didn't know was there. "She said your mother says that being mean back doesn't fix the reason they were mean," he said. A small pause. "She told you that," Serena said. "Yes." She shook her head, not in negation, but in the way of someone absorbing something they'll carry. "I've been saying that for 4 years, she said, "since her father left. I didn't know she was keeping it." Alara was returning from the dog, walking fast, pom-pom hat bouncing. Serena straightened, and the open expression became its usual careful version, and it occurred to Dante that what he had seen in those few seconds was something Serena almost never let anyone see, not because she hid it, but because almost no one asked her the right question. They walked the rest of the way to the building. At the door, Alara said goodnight to Dante with her usual formality, and went upstairs. Serena lingered on the step for a moment. "She's different already," she said. It was quiet and direct and had nothing performative in it. "She was always this," he said. The fear was covering it. Serena looked at him. "You understand that about people," she said. It was an observation, not a compliment. "I've spent a long time watching people be afraid," he said. "You learn to see what's underneath." She held that for a moment, then, "What's underneath mine?" The question surprised him. He thought she surprised herself with it too, a slight widening of those dark eyes, a fraction of a second's recalibration. He answered honestly, because dishonesty would have been an insult, and she would have known it immediately. "Steadiness," he said, "the kind that costs something." She was quiet. "Good night," he said. "Good night," she said. He walked back to the barber shop. He sat behind his desk. He looked at the photograph of the neighborhood on the wall and thought about the architecture of people, about what gets built over fear, and whether the building is always the same shape, and whether the shape can change. He didn't arrive at any conclusions. He drank Marco's coffee and went home. The 3rd week arrived, carrying a quality of transition. The cold front had settled in fully now, real November cold, the kind that turns breath visible and makes the morning walk feel like moving through something resistant. Alara had upgraded from the red wool hat to a full winter coat, which was slightly too large for her and had a zipper that stuck, and which she refused to let Dante help with because she was learning to do it herself and needed 1 more week to get it reliable. "Thank you." He stood on the sidewalk every morning, watching her work the zipper. He did not help. She got it on the 3rd try on Monday, the 2nd try on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, she got it 1st try, and looked up at him with an expression that was the precise emotional equivalent of a fist pump, delivered with the dignity of a person who would never actually fist pump. Something happened on Monday of the 3rd week that he had not anticipated. Two parents were at the school gate when he arrived with Alara. He recognized one of them from the 14 reports, a woman named Patricia, whose daughter had transferred to a school 3 neighborhoods away in the spring. She was there with the transferred daughter, who was 8, and who stood close to her mother's side with the body language of a child, still calibrating whether a place is safe. Patricia looked at Dante with the particular expression of someone who has been given back something they had stopped expecting. She didn't say anything at first. Then she said, "My daughter asked if she could come back." He said, "She can come back. It's different? It's different," he said. The 8-year-old was looking at Alara. Alara was looking at the 8-year-old. Some exchange happened between them. The specific frequency of communication available to children who recognize, without needing to discuss it, that they share a particular kind of understanding. "Hi," Alara said. "Hi," the 8-year-old said. "The orange cat is at the printing shop on 5th if you want to see it on the way home," Alara said. "It's always there." The 8-year-old looked at her mother. Patricia looked at her daughter. Something passed between them that Dante didn't look at directly, because it was private in the way that only very specific kinds of relief are private. On Tuesday, the local news story ran its second piece, this one with the names of all 8 displaced families, and with a direct quote from the parents' advocacy organization about the 2-year pattern of suppressed reports. Councilman Prentice released a statement through his office. The statement used the words, "deeply concerned," and "committed to accountability," and had the particular careful vagueness of a document assembled by people who are managing the geometry of blame. It satisfied no one. It was intended to satisfy no one. It was intended to create the appearance of response, which was the only tool Prentice had left. By Wednesday, 2 city council members had requested a formal audit of the school board's funding committee. Serena texted him Wednesday evening. The advocacy organization is naming it officially. They're calling it the Prentice Pattern. 7 other schools, Dante. 7. He read this and was still for a moment. Then he replied, "How long have they known?" She replied, "Long enough. They've been trying to get traction for 18 months. Alara gave them traction." He thought about a 6-year-old girl with a crayon note and a turtle backpack. He thought about what it means when one person walks into one room and everything downstream changes. He replied, "Keep the files. Everything." She replied, "Obviously. I work in records." He set the phone down. He almost smiled. It was the 3rd time she had almost made him smile in 11 days. And he was aware of this in the way that a precise man is aware of patterns, not with alarm, but with attention. Wednesday evening of the 3rd week, there was a knock at the barbershop's back door after hours. He opened it. Serena was on the step, holding a paper bag from the bakery on Mercer. Not the closer one, the better one 2 blocks further. She had her coat on and her bag strapped diagonal, and she looked like someone who had made a decision and was slightly uncomfortable with it and was not going to back down. "I know this is your office," she said. This isn't a visit. I have something for you." He stepped back and held the door. She came in. She looked at the room, the dark wood desk, the standing lamp, the filing cabinet, the 3 photographs on the wall. She looked at the photographs longer than she looked at anything else. He watched her look at the neighborhood photo, the grid, the steeple, the afternoon light. She set the paper bag on the desk. Inside, 2 coffees in paper cups and something wrapped in paper that turned out to be a pan dolce from the Brazilian bakery that he had not known existed, but which she informed him was 6 blocks east and had been there for 11 years, and had no English signage, which was why he'd never noticed it. "You've been getting my daughter to school for 3 weeks, she said. "I wanted to—" She stopped. She started again. "I don't do things without acknowledging them. It's a habit." "Sit down," he said. She sat. He sat across from her. He opened his coffee. She looked at the photographs again. "Which street is that?" she said. "About the one that wasn't this neighborhood." "Bensonhurst," he said. "Where I grew up. You don't go back." "No." She absorbed this without pressing it. She looked at the woman in the second photograph. He did not volunteer information. She did not ask. She looked at the neighborhood photograph. "How long have you been here?" 23 years. "That's most of Alara's life and then some," she said, and then seemed to consider whether that was the right observation to offer. She decided to leave it. She took a sip of her coffee. He thought about many things he did not say. He thought about what 23 years in one place means, the commitment of it, the choice, the way a neighborhood becomes something different from where you live when you have decided, with the full weight of intention. that it is what you are responsible for. He thought about how it would sound to say this to a woman who had been in this neighborhood for 6 years, with a child and a missing husband, and a job that required her to be out of the house before 7. "You've been here 6 years," he said. She looked at him. "Rosa told you." "Rosa tells me most things." "She told me most things about you too," Serena said. "I want you to know I made my own conclusions." "What were they?" She was quiet for a moment. "Then, that you're a man who built something out of damage, and that the something works, and that you've never been sure whether that makes the damage worth it." The room was very still. He looked at her. She looked at him with the straight, careful attention of a woman who has spent years reading documents for what they don't say, and has applied the same skill to people for longer. "That's accurate," he said. She nodded once, as if he had confirmed something she had already filed. "Alara thinks you're the second smartest person she knows," he said. Something moved across Serena's face, quick and warm, the expression of a mother hearing about her child with affection from an unexpected quarter. "She told me you're nicer," he said. "I am," she said. "Yes," he said. She finished her coffee. She stood up. She did not leave immediately. She stood at the desk for a moment, and he had the sense that there was something she was deciding whether to say. He waited. "Friday's the last day," she said. 3 weeks. "I know. She's ready," she said. It came out quiet. Not sad, not relieved, but the specific tone of a mother who has been watching her child become something and is naming it. "I know," he said again. She picked up her bag. She looked at the neighborhood photograph one more time. "You should come," she said, "for dinner. Friday, after." He was quiet. "Alara will want to show you her drawings," she said, which was true, and also was not the whole truth, and they both understood this. "Yes," he said. She left. He heard the back door close. He sat with his empty coffee cup and the pan dolce wrapper and the photograph of the neighborhood and thought about 45 years of having built, intentionally and precisely, a life in which he needed no one. About the particular craftsmanship of that construction, about what it cost to build it, and what it had cost to maintain it, and what it meant that in 3 weeks, a 6-year-old girl and her mother had walked through it, the way morning walks through a room when someone opens the curtains, not destroying anything, just making it impossible to pretend the darkness was the only option. He thought, "I have been the man this neighborhood fears for 23 years, and he thought, that child chose me anyway. And then he thought the thing that was hardest and most precise. She didn't choose me because of what I built. She chose me in spite of it. She chose the part that was there before the building started, the 7-year-old on the sidewalk who just wanted to walk to school." He sat with this for a long time. Then he turned off the standing lamp and went home. Friday arrived the way last days of important things arrive, ordinary on its surface, weighted underneath. The light was thin and clear, the cold definitive, the street making its usual morning sounds. Alara was at the barber shop at 7:30 with her coat zipper done on the first try. She did not mention that this was the last day. He did not mention it either. They walked. At the bakery on Mercer, he stopped and bought 2 coffees and a small hot chocolate without being asked. He handed Alara the hot chocolate. She accepted it without comment, which was its own form of acceptance, the ease of someone receiving something from a person who has learned what they want. They walked with their cups. The cold made the steam substantial, rising and disappearing. At the corner of 5th and Arch, Alara slowed. He slowed with her. She looked at the corner, at the place where the 3 boys had stood for 22 weeks. It was empty, as it had been empty for 2 weeks now. She looked at it for a long moment, with the expression of someone revising a memory, taking a thing that had meant one thing and making it mean something else. Then she looked up at him. "I used to cross the street 2 blocks back," she said, "so they wouldn't see me coming." He looked at the corner. "And now?" She looked at it again. Then she walked directly through it. Not fast, not slow, not the chin-up performance of the first week, but something quieter and more final. She walked through 5th and Arch the way you walk through a place that used to be a threshold and is now just a corner. He walked beside her. The school was 1 block further, 50 steps from the gate. Alara stopped. He stopped. She was looking at the gate, at the other children arriving, the cluster of parents, Fernanda with her clipboard. She was looking at it with an expression that was new, not alertness for danger, Not the managed calm of someone bracing, not relief. Something beyond all of those. Something that was simply hers, generated from the inside, not in response to anything external. She turned and looked up at him. "I'm not scared today," she said. He looked at her, the red pom-pom hat, the too large coat with the now reliable zipper, the turtle backpack, the yellow elastic bands at the ends of her braids. The dark eyes that had been looking at the world with too much alertness for too long, and which were looking at him now with something that was simply clear. "I know," he said. She looked at the gate, then back at him. Then she did something he had not expected. She let go, not of his hand. They hadn't been holding hands. She let go of whatever invisible thread she had been maintaining between herself and the safety of his presence, the one she had established on the first morning and maintained across 15 school days. He felt it release not as a physical thing, but as a shift in the air between them, a small, complete, unrepeatable thing. She walked, the last 200 meters to the gate, alone, with her chin level and her pace steady, and her coat zipper closed, and her backpack square between her shoulder blades. 4 children near the gate looked up when she approached. He recognized 2 of them as classmates who had started sitting with her at lunch. They moved to make room for her in their cluster without being asked. She went through the gate. At the fence, she turned back once, not to check that he was there, not to confirm safety. She turned back the way you turn back to show someone something. "Here, look. See this thing that is happening." Her expression was the answer to a question she'd been asking for 22 weeks. And the answer was, yes. Then she turned and walked into the schoolyard. He stood on the sidewalk. He had been a man who made things happen for 45 years. He had engineered outcomes, managed systems, made rooms go quiet with the quality of his attention. He had built a kingdom on the principle that the best protection is power, and the best power is fear, and the best fear is the kind that doesn't require demonstration. He stood on the sidewalk watching a 6-year-old walk the last 200 meters alone, and something in his chest broke open in the specific way that things break when they have been held together by the wrong material for too long, not with grief, with something that was the opposite of grief. He stood there for a long time. Then he walked back through the neighborhood he had protected for 23 years, and he thought about the difference between being feared and being chosen. And he thought about the way Alara had walked through 5th and Arch as though it were just a corner, and he thought about a 7-year-old boy on a cold sidewalk who had decided that morning that he would spend the rest of his life making sure no one could do to him what those boys had done. He thought, the boy made that decision alone. He thought, she didn't have to. He went back to the barber shop. He sat behind his desk. He did not open the filing cabinet. He did not make calls. He did not manage anything. He sat with the orange crayon note and held it for a long time, and then he folded it carefully along its original creases, the ones Alara had made, folding and unfolding in the dark, and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket, where he kept the things that had no system. Marco brought coffee. "She did it," Marco said, which was the most words he had said in the 11 years he had worked there. "She did it," Dante said. Marco nodded. He went back to the front of the shop. Dante drank the coffee and waited for evening. They came at 7:15, which he already knew from the single text Serena had sent that afternoon. 7:15. Don't be early. He was not early. He was exactly on time, which she also expected, and he knew she expected it, and the fact that they both already knew these things about each other was itself something he noticed. Alara opened the door. She was wearing pajamas with small foxes on them, and her hair was down from the braids, loose and wavy, the same texture as her mother's, and she was holding a drawing with both hands, the way people hold important documents. "Come in," she said, with the gravity of someone receiving a guest in their own home. The apartment was warm. It smelled like something baking, not the cinnamon of the Mercer bakery, but something more specific, more domestic, the particular smell of a kitchen that belongs to someone who cooks because it matters. The walls had drawings on them, Ilara's, he assumed, framed in simple wooden frames, that Serena had hung at a child's eye level on one wall and adult eye level on another, a bookshelf with 2 rows of books, and a 3rd row of objects that had been placed with intention, a reading chair by the window with a lamp that had a warm bulb. It was a home made carefully from limited materials. He recognized the specific intelligence of it, the way every object was both useful and chosen. Serena came from the kitchen. She had changed from her work clothes into something more comfortable, and her hair was down, and she had flour on her wrist, which she noticed when she looked down, and wiped with a dish towel with the particular matter-of-factness of a person who doesn't perform domesticity. "You're on time," she said. "You said 7:15, he said. She handed him the dish towel for some reason. Habit? Miscalculation? The small social error of a person who doesn't have guests often enough for the choreography to be automatic. He took it. She looked at his hand holding the dish towel. A small sound came out of her that was almost a laugh. "I don't know why I gave you that," she said. "I'll hold it," he said. "Please don't," she said, and he gave it back, and she put it over her shoulder, and the moment dissolved into the ordinary, which was its own kind of warmth. Alara had arranged the drawing on the kitchen table and stood beside it waiting. He went to look. She had drawn it in crayon, every color in the box, it seemed, layered with the specific intensity of a child who is putting everything into something. 3 figures, side by side. The tallest on the left was unmistakably him, silver and dark at the top of the figure. Very tall, hands large. In the middle, a small figure with a red pom-pom hat and a turtle-shaped backpack. On the right, a figure with wavy dark hair and a diagonal bag strap, and one hand extending to the figure in the middle. Below it, in careful orange crayon, large deliberate letters, "My Friday Family." He looked at the drawing for a long time. He had been given many things in his life. He had been given fear and respect and loyalty and obedience and territory and silence. All the currencies of the world he had built. He had never been given anything he hadn't already held the architecture for, anything that required him to build new room. He looked at "My Friday Family" in orange crayon. He thought, "I have not been someone's family in a very long time." He thought, "I did not know I wanted to be." He thought, "She knew before I did." He looked up. Alara was watching him with the steady attention of a child who has given someone something real and is waiting to see if they know what to do with it. Serena was watching from the kitchen doorway, with the expression he had seen once before, open, careful, a room she didn't usually let people into. "It's very accurate," he said. "You got the height right." Alara nodded seriously. "I measured with my arm," she said. He looked at Serena. "Sit down," she said. "The cake is crooked. I have to tell you up front that it's crooked." "I don't mind crooked," he said. "It's very crooked," Alara said helpfully. The cake was indeed crooked, a layer cake that had listed slightly to the left, iced in uneven white with sprinkles applied with the commitment of a 6-year-old who does not believe in half measures. On the top, in Serena's careful handwriting, for Alara, who was brave first, he sat at the kitchen table. Alara sat across from him and told him about the day's events with the thorough reporting style she had used on every walk home, each observation delivered in sequence, nothing omitted, everything weighted by her personal assessment of significance. He listened the way he listened to everything, completely. Serena brought plates. She sat at the end of the table between them. He watched her cut the cake. She cut it with the same precision she brought to everything, not fussing, not performing, just doing the thing with attention. She gave Alara the piece with the most sprinkles without being asked. She gave him the largest piece without asking if he wanted it. She gave herself the smallest piece and ate it standing up for 30 seconds before Alara looked at her and said, "Maman, sit." And she sat. "Maman," he said. It came out quiet, observational. Her father was Brazilian, Serena said. No weight in it, no wound, just a fact. Offered because the context was clear. "Was," he said. "He left," she said. "4 years ago. We don't know where." A pause. Ilara was too. She doesn't ask much anymore. He was quiet. He thought about the word left and what it means when a person leaves a 2-year-old and a 30-year-old and takes the explanation with them. He thought about the 7:15 mornings and the 2 incident forms and the compressed arithmetic of a woman raising a remarkable child alone while the systems that were supposed to help her failed one at a time. He thought about steadiness, the kind that costs something. "She has you," he said. Serena looked at her plate. Then she looked at him. "She has you now too," she said. It was quiet and deliberate, and was not a small thing dressed as a small thing. Ilara, who had been eating cake with complete focus, looked up at this. She looked at her mother, then at Dante, with the assessing expression of a child who has been paying attention to adults longer than adults realize. "That's the drawing," she said, pointing at the picture on the table. "Friday Family." "I see that," Dante said. "You can come on other days too," Alara said. "Not just Fridays. But Fridays are good, because Mom doesn't have to wake up as early, and she's less tired." Serena looked at her daughter. "I'm just explaining," Ilara said. He looked at the crooked cake. He looked at the drawing. He looked at Alara with her wavy, loose hair and her fox pajamas, and her direct, unmanageable honesty. He looked at Serena, who was looking at her plate in the way of someone who is feeling more than she intends to show, and knows that she is showing it anyway. He thought about the 45 years, and the kingdom, and the fear, and the newspaper, and the filing cabinet, and the 14 reports, and the 7 other schools, and the 8 children, and the orange crayon note folded in his jacket pocket, and the notebook with the red cover that his mother found and put down and made dinner. He thought about the boy on the sidewalk who decided to become something that could never be hurt like that again. He thought he did become it. He thought it was not enough. He thought, this is. Fridays are good, he said. Alara nodded. Also Wednesdays, she said. Mom makes soup. Alara, Serena said. He should know about the soup, Alara said. He looked at Serena. She was looking at him with the open expression, the real one, and she had stopped managing it. Her dark almond eyes were warm and careful and direct in the way of a woman who has spent years being strong for someone else, and is only now, in this kitchen, with this cake and this drawing, allowing herself the possibility of being held. The soup is very good, he said. I know, she said. They ate the crooked cake. Outside, the November cold pressed against the windows, and inside the apartment that smelled like baking and crayons and warmth. The 3 of them sat at a kitchen table with a lopsided cake and a drawing in orange crayon, and the man who had built a kingdom out of fear discovered, at 52 years old, that the thing he had been building toward, the thing he had been circling for 45 years without knowing it, was not safety. It was this. There are stories I carry when I leave them, and there are stories that carry me. This one has been carrying me for weeks. I keep thinking about what Dante said when I asked him, months after all of this, what he would say to the 7-year-old boy on the sidewalk if he could. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I wouldn't say anything. I'd just walk with him. That's the whole story, I think. That's everything it's trying to say. We spend so much of our lives building armor against the moments that broke us when we were small. And the armor works. It is effective. It is exactly as good at protecting us as we designed it to be. The tragedy is not that it fails. It's that it succeeds. And we wake up one morning at 52 and realize the armor has been protecting us from the very things we built the armor to earn. Alara walked the last 200 meters alone. Dante stood on the sidewalk and watched her, and the thing that broke open in him was not grief, and it was not loss. It was recognition of something that had been possible the whole time. I don't know if that's comforting or devastating. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's what every story worth telling is. Both things, held at the same time, requiring you to sit with them until they stop feeling like opposites. If this story meant something to you, if it found something in you that needed finding, I hope you'll tell me. And now, click on the video appearing on your screen. There's another one waiting, and I'll be there too.